Hello and welcome back to the J&Z podcast. My name is Jace Van Ort.
And I'm Zeth Makala.
And today we're going to be jumping right into things, talking about the last Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. This movie is quite the roller coaster, if I do say so myself, and we have a lot to say about it. So Zeth, right? I just got done watching this movie no less than half an hour ago. Finally got it finished. When was the last time you watched this movie? I know you've watched them all again, but how long's it been?
I recently watched it because of No Way Home, just to get myself remembering who Electro was and all the characters in this movie.
Yeah, speaking of characters, this movie has a lot of them.
It
And,
does.
I'm going to start out with what is debatably the worst villain out of the entire thing. You were going on and on the past few episodes about how, I don't like the Tobey Maguire's Green Goblin. I think he looks stupid. At least Harry. What do you think about the troll looking one?
This one looks
Straight
better
out
than
of a
the
nightmare.
stupid Harry Goblin. Are you kidding me?
No.
This one looks so much better.
He looks awful.
He's awful.
He looks awful.
And if it was swapped out with a different actor, I guess.
hate that actor so much. I don't know why. He just has he's like the most pretentious thing you've ever seen. I know that's just supposed to be his character, but I despise this version of the Green Goblin.
I will say, I think it would have been better if it wasn't so thrown in at the last second. Like I said, if you were to look at it, just the picture of him, I think it looks fine. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing in the world. Like I said, the Green Goblin before is one of the hardest characters to put in the cinema. It's just one of those weird things in comic books where it's like his mask moves, but it's like Spider-Man's mask where he can just tear it off.
Regardless, even if it was, no matter what you think of his character design, his placement in the movie is totally forgettable. I didn't even remember he was in the movie until he got introduced. I totally forgot he was even in the movie. And I know it's because it's been a while.
Oscorp was like a thing in this universe because I forget in the first movie, the building that the lizard is in, that's Oscorp's building. I just totally forgot about that until they have Harry show up and he's like, I'm Harry Osborn.
Harry Osborn. I talk like this the whole
I will
movie.
say, his chemistry with Andrew Garfield is good.
It felt so forced, though, especially in the beginning. Like, he just came out of nowhere, and throughout the entire rest of the movie, he and his entire father plot point all felt like side plots. And I know they were, but they felt like they didn't add anything to me.
No,
Green
I know.
Goblin didn't do anything except for try to kill Gwen for some reason. And I know why, but it was just a mess.
No, I know. This movie is definitely one of the messiest, worst things probably ever put to screen, in my opinion. But it's just entertaining. It's entertaining.
I don't even know about that, Zeth.
Well, at least with the problem is with Spider-Man 3, a lot of people say that one's entertaining. It's a terrible movie, but it's entertaining. That one I was bored with watching, even with the silliness of it. Like I said before, because it has serious moments, and then all of a sudden it jump cuts to a silly moment like him dancing. It'd be fine if the whole movie was like that, where it was silly. This entire movie doesn't have a serious spine in its body.
It is a little more lighthearted. I will give it that.
What There's actually
some decent jokes. So yeah, let's actually talk about, before we get into all the negatives, what are a couple things that you liked about it? I can go first if you want. I think that the swinging part was as good as the first one. Maybe a little less showiness, but I think that as actual Spider-Man's movements and everything, I think they did a great job choreographing that.
The beginning of this movie, not the weird plane scene, but when he's just like skydiving and then it shows him whipping himself, and it's the fabric on his suit is like flapping really hard.
Yeah.
Um, and he whips himself, and you can feel like the G force. And when he whips himself, and it like kind of launches himself, and he like grabs his arm in a weird way. You feel that it feels really good, and you can definitely see where some of the Spider-Man PS4 game got its like whipping and web swinging action from.
Yeah, the movements in this one are spot on. They're very, very well done.
I like the slow motion parts. There was a couple moments in the first Amazing Spider-Man where like he was whipping himself and it'd like slow down and it'd go. And in this one, it has a lot more of those like big wide shots. Like it slows down time and stuff.
Yeah,
The
there was a
sound
couple neat
goes out.
moments. Probably the debatably the best scene in the entire movie is like that. That being Gwen Stacy's unfortunate demise.
Hmm. I will say I don't like Electro in this movie. I absolutely hate him and his design. I understand it's more accurate to the Ultimate Spider-Man comics and when he gets like supercharged, but
I'll kind of debate you on this a bit. What would have looked more ridiculous, what they did, or the green spandex with the billboard sign on his face that was the comic book Electro? Would you prefer that?
no, but there's a way to do it, and I really think the way they did it in No Way Home was the best.
True. I like that.
I'm not saying that you have to, or even like the game, like you know how the game had an Easter egg, like almost like he had the star shapes face at one time, but it's like a scar now there.
Oh, that's actually kind of interesting. I didn't even see that. Or I
Yeah,
never thought to notice it. It's been a minute. I'll have to play that again.
yeah. The I think there's a way to do it. I just think they went way too silly with it. It looks way too silly. That being said, though, when they're fighting, it's really really cool. I like their
There,
first
I like,
fight,
yeah.
and I like their second one.
The I like the blue like trails and the special effects that leaves behind. That it's kind of neat. It does feel like it's an electrical kind of fight, which it is. My biggest issue with the character is just how he became a bad guy.
Hmm.
You can make an argument for Green Goblin, all these other people, why they became bad. Venom, because there's something outside that's affecting them. But this guy, literally on a flip of a dime or whatever, went from full on loving Spider-Man to like totally not listening, totally just over. I know he was overwhelmed, but it was a very unbelievable way of going about it. I feel. I just wish that he had not necessarily more time to develop his character. I just wish that he was a different character to a certain extent. He was. I get the whole being a loser or whatever point, but it just didn't seem to work for such a cool villain.
Yeah, there's just way too much going on in this movie. I think that if this movie was edited down a little more, it would be a little less big. There's some things that just don't fit in this movie. Like in the beginning when it's showing his parents dying in the plane, you could have cut all that out.
I would cut out absolutely everything, but maybe like the voicemail scene with his dad, because I don't really care about his parents in this one. I know they had a pivotal effect on the plot, but the only thing that they affected was the Green Goblin story, and that part was useless too. I would totally cut that out as well. It all was just a little extra padding. I wish they could have done more. I wish they could have done more with Electro and reshaped his character, given him more time to flourish, and they had no problem doing it with like a Doc Ock, but somehow they felt the need to make.
It was also
I,
kind of weird that like his father like infused his own DNA, so the only way someone could have become Spider-Man is being Pete. Like Peter's the only one that could have. It was just kind of weird.
yeah, it just adds another layer of improbability. It's already rare enough that he got bit by the spider. It just adds a whole bunch of nonsense that doesn't really mean anything, I feel.
Yeah. And I think you could have cut out there's this other side plot at the end, like the planes that are intersecting with each other. That has
I mean,
no
they were
like
fine, but they're so different from the rest of the movie.
Well, it was just it had no effect like on it. Like if it was the plane like about to crash into the electric fuse that like they were fighting in, I guess that makes a little more sense, but it had no effect on the plot whatsoever. It didn't forward it in any shape.
No, no, no. This movie was 2 hours and 20 minutes, I believe, and it could have easily been cut down to 2 hours or less if they had just cut out all the
I think
garbage.
you could have gone an hour and a half, honestly.
If they, the whole Green Goblin thing, throughout the whole movie, it's just, they
I
barely
think
do anything with it.
I
He
think it's
barely,
important to set it up. I think because you can definitely tell this is when they were trying to set up their own Spider-Man universe before they rebooted it again with Venom. And I think it would have been important to set up Harry. The only bad thing is he's not in the first movie. Like you didn't see little Harry next to little Peter, so it's
no,
just
no, no.
kind of like
He
a
walked in
swing
and
and a
they were the best
miss.
of friends. It made no sense. You're like, who is this guy?
Yeah, so I think what they could have done is maybe he bumps into him when he's like down, like when Harry's really down, his dad just died, and maybe he's wandering in the streets drunk or something like that, and Peter bumps into him, and they become best of friends that way. You know what I mean? And they bond that way, like they become friends in this movie. Not that's already established that they are friends.
Ah, so you're taking more of a Raimi trilogy approach to the Green Goblin in
No,
that
no, 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 no.
sense.
So if you had to, so what I'm saying is, if you had to have it this way, where they're friends in this movie, what I would have done is cut out everything with Green Goblin. I would have had it where Harry still becomes the sole keeper of Osborn and his dad dies. But instead of trying to him slowly getting this weird goblin disease, I would have had him maybe be drunk or something like that and he's wandering the streets and he's like really depressed and then all of a sudden Peter bumps into him and they bond and be friends that way. That they become friends in this movie. They meet for the first time in this movie.
I
And that's
totally
a
agree.
setup.
It just, they had all this time that they spent on this movie and they did absolutely nothing. He only talked to Peter once or twice about serious things. When he met Spider-Man, nothing happened really, and all it prompted him to, and he didn't even need Spider-Man the whole time anyways. And then all he did for all that setup, all that time put into Harry, was swing in, blow up a clock tower, and throw down Gwen Stacy, and then he's out of commission. He was in there for like 5 minutes tops,
I will
less
say
than
the
that.
big problem with this movie is the plot forwards the characters. The characters don't forward the plot. That's a big thing in this movie that
What do you mean by that?
well, okay, so usually with a story you have it where the characters they forward their plot, their motivations, their actions. That's what forwards the plot. What this movie did was its story forwards the characters and that's how a bad movie usually is made. You can sometimes do that very well, but it usually doesn't work out very well. So, for instance, his parents have this weird side plot that forwards Peter into wanting to do the more research. He becomes more depressed about his parents, so to speak, and that forwards him to want to, explore the subway and stuff. And then the plot also forwards his actions to. It's not really like, you know what I'm saying? It's not natural.
No, I understand. I blinked, and all of a sudden he went from connecting all the dots to he found this random key, and then all of a sudden he's at this random terminal in this random subway, and it just, I
See,
might have
that's
missed
what I'm
something
saying.
there.
Like the story is forwarding the characters.
I totally agree. I see what you're saying now. Yes, that is definitely very present in this film.
So the one thing I loved about Amazing Spider-Man 1 was the fact that it felt very natural. The talking, the dialogue, the actions, they all felt very natural. With this one, it's like they tossed it up, they crumpled it into a piece of paper and they tossed it out the window. No longer does everything feel natural in this movie.
The beginning wasn't bad though. The beginning sequence wasn't that bad. When things were first starting to go, let me check my notes real quick.
I guess,
I only
but
took I only took a couple notes, but I do remember that intro fight was actually kind of fun. It started out decent. I don't actually remember that fight, but I remember it being fun.
Yeah.
where he was cracking jokes and all that stuff, going against those bank robbers in the big truck. Yeah. Overall, it's just a lack of compelling villains with compelling reasons. The Electro is just a guy that was sad and now he's mad, and Green Goblin just felt like such a forced character into the plot in the first place, and then he has the whole thing was just weird. This is the first time we're hearing about some weird goblin disease, all this. Why does he need Spider-Man's blood? I know they say it, but do they actually, like, they don't explain why? Maybe, oh, it was the regenerative properties or whatever. But it was just a big old mess of stuff, and it made everything very confusing to me, at least.
Yeah, it just was, like I said, this movie could have probably been edited down to an hour and a half, or like you said, 2 hours. There's just a lot going on here, like more so than Spider-Man 3. Because with Spider-Man 3, at least it was kind of cohesive. Like, okay, Peter's got his life in kind of disarray. He's really cocky, and he slowly starts going down the path of this darkness, and villains show up. Probably that's the most confusing thing about Spider-Man 3, are the villain side plots you got to keep track of. With this, there's so many different side plots. It's really convoluted and nuts.
If Electro wasn't such a flip of the switch kind of villain, he literally went from just confused to evil in one single sentence. At least not. Was it Eddie Brock, the other reporter, or am I thinking of something else, who got the Venom suit in 3?
No, that's Eddie Brock.
At least he slowly, like, he got screwed over by Spider-Man. Peter told him to rub some dirt in your eye, and there's some progress leading up to him being Venom. There's a reason for him to kind of want Venom's abilities, and why it's taking control over him. The electricity didn't affect his brain or nothing for Electro. He just was sick of being a loser. But he really didn't seem like that type of guy until it literally just flipped, just like that. And it just makes for a very unbelievable villain, that all of a sudden now he wants all this stuff, even though it doesn't gain him anything.
What did you think about the ending?
Oh, I thought it was hilarious. I actually really liked that version of the Rhino, kind of. It just was a funny nod to it, and it included it, and I thought it was actually really fun.
Uh,
It was probably one of the
didn't
better
like the
parts of
Rhino
the movie.
suit.
I thought it was fun, and I liked the guy.
Yeah,
He
it
was
was
a funny
fun.
Russian guy, and I would have much rather
What'd you
seen
think
that
about?
fight, I'm telling you that much, than whatever the heck Green Goblin did.
Yeah, that's true. What did you think about Gwen's death?
Oh, that's probably the peak of the movie. And although Harry was absolutely not needed at all, he technically caused it. Could have easily been Electro doing the same thing, but whatever. Besides the fact that that's all Harry was good for, it was a very, very good part of the movie. It really actually brought some actual emotion and some really, really good choreography of it. I think they did a fantastic job with that part.
Yeah, you really see Andrew Garfield's acting really come. Like, you think it's good when Ben dies. Like, in this scene, you really, really feel it.
Yeah.
The only problem I have with that, I don't mind the death. I think it's cool that we get to see one of the most iconic things in comic book history actually on film. The problem with it is it's at the very end of the movie. So there's not really a moment where you have the hero rise.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
it just
saying?
was the aftermath of it was kind of strange, because he mourned over Captain Stacy more than he did his own girlfriend. It seemed like.
Well, even when you're, because you're still like, it's still in your chest, you're still hurt by it all. And even when he's fighting Rhino and he comes out of hiding at last, it's still like, this doesn't feel right. You know what I mean?
It didn't feel genuine. It just felt weird. He didn't seem depressed enough. I know it's just a funny thing to say, but he just kind of just stopped doing it, and then he came back like whoop-de-doo. It was over the course of 5 minutes.
Well, I'm not saying with like him being depressed, I thought that was fine. I'm saying like you don't have this moment in the movie where you have the hero, he's depressed, he's down, but then all of a sudden he rises back up. It's such a dramatic right at the end in like 5 minutes you have
Yeah.
him at his lowest. Then you have it go shooting back up when he fights the rhino. It just doesn't feel right. Even when he's fighting the rhino and he's like, "I'll take care of this kid." It feels wrong.
It does. Yeah, it didn't to me because I barely felt anything before then. I'm just like, oh, okay, this is happening. I can actually move on. And it just is shocking to me the amount of time that they had and they put into the movie and what they chose to focus on.
Yeah.
There's definitely.
What did you think about the suit?
Oh, I love the suit. It's a lot better in this one. It's not some
Mm-hmm.
weird gold reflective eyes. It actually has the white eye pieces that he's so iconic for. And it just looks like an actual good Spider-Man suit for once.
Yeah. This was definitely my favorite suit until the eyes with Tom Holland. I still like this suit the most, but if you have the Tom Holland eyes in it, then it'd be really, really great.
It sure would. It still felt a little. It still felt a little fake. Sometimes you still couldn't really see his mouth moving or anything, but it did look a lot more natural than the Tobey Maguire costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think in general, I think people overstate how bad the movie is. I think there's certainly
Mm-hmm.
some enjoyment to be had. There's some cool scenes in it, and certainly some. It's a funnier movie, and I do kind of appreciate that. There's some parts. There's actually some decent jokes in here that made me laugh, and obviously it's one of the worst Spider-Man movies. There's no doubt about that. But I think it gets a little bit too much hate for what it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. When I was rewatching all of these, I actually enjoyed this one better than Spider-Man 3, and I enjoyed it a lot more than the first Spider-Man movie, actually.
I could see that. I could see that. The first Spider-Man movie was definitely dated and had its fair share of problems.
This one's terrible. It's very, very bad. Like I said, story makes no sense at times, but it's entertaining, and that's what you go for with a movie, is how entertaining is it? And I had a good time with it.
Yeah. Well, I think that just about wraps up our review. Do you have anything else you want to mention?
No.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for listening, guys. If you want, you can leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you guys want us to talk about in the future. We'd love to know your feedback. You can listen to this podcast on any of these other platforms listed below. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.